The storm was raging outside, but the real danger lurked in the darkness of the laboratory. Among shadows and loose wires, an unknown creature waited silently, watching every movement. His eyes shone like beacons, carrying secrets that no one dared to imagine. And in that moment it became clear that nothing was what it seemed. Before listening to this impressive story, remember to subscribe to the channel. The storm lashed the Florida Keys with unusual fury, even for the rainy season. Jake Martinez drove his Toyota Hilux pickup truck along the winding road between the forest and the coast of Key West, his headlights barely penetrating the curtain of water falling incessantly. At 32, Jake was a software developer who had left the hectic life of New York City to establish his startup focused on environmental conservation apps. His company, Ecosoft, had gained recognition for creating technological tools that helped scientists and conservationists track endangered species. Irony of fate, he thought, that his desk job had brought him so close to the nature he admired so much. The rain intensified, and lightning intermittently illuminated the tropical landscape. Jake reduced his speed, aware of the danger posed by slippery stretches and trees that could fall onto the road. His hands, accustomed to typing code, now gripped the steering wheel with absolute concentration. That's when he saw it. A flash of movement among the bushes, something small trembling against the violence of the storm. A movement so subtle that it could easily have been lost among the flashes of lightning and the curtain of water. Jake braked abruptly, the truck skidding on the wet asphalt. His years of driving in difficult conditions allowed him to maintain control, stopping the vehicle a few meters from where he had seen the movement. Without thinking twice, he opened the door. The rain soaked him instantly, his navy blue waterproof jacket barely offering protection against the tropical storm. With cautious steps, he approached the spot where he had seen the movement. Among the branches and waterlogged undergrowth, something was trembling. At first, Jake thought it was a simple plastic bag blown by the wind, but when he got closer, he discovered it was a living creature. It looked like a kitten, but something in its gaze was different, more intense, wilder. Its eyes, large and bright, observed him with an intensity that went beyond what Jake had seen in any domestic animal. With slow and gentle movements, as if trying not to scare an injured creature, Jake approached. The small creature didn't move, but it didn't seem scared either. Its reflexes were strange, its posture more similar to that of a predator than a defenseless kitten. He wrapped it in a towel he kept in the back of his truck. The creature didn't resist, but it didn't seem completely helpless either. Its muscles, though small, suggested a strength that didn't correspond to a common domestic animal. "I'll call you Cloud," Jake murmured, as the small being stared at him intently, as if it could see beyond the obvious. He didn't know at that moment that he had just crossed a threshold that would completely change his life, that the small being he had rescued wasn't a simple stray cat, but the beginning of a mystery that would lead him to unravel a more complex network of animal trafficking than he could have ever imagined. The storm continued outside, but inside the truck, Jake and Cloud were beginning a journey that neither of them could have predicted. The days following Cloud's rescue were marked by a series of increasingly strange events. Jake noticed that the small animal didn't behave like a common cat. Its movements were precise, calculated, with an agility that defied its apparent young age. At night, Cloud emitted guttural sounds that chilled the blood. They weren't meows, but something more primitive, wilder. Jake recorded these sounds on his phone, intrigued by the unusual nature of the creature. His house, a modern concrete and glass refuge on the outskirts of Key West, originally designed as a remote workspace, now seemed too small for Cloud's movements. The animal explored every corner with a meticulousness that went beyond typical feline curiosity. One morning, while working on a new algorithm to track migratory species, Jake noticed something peculiar. Cloud had left strange marks on the wooden floor. They were scratches different from those of a domestic cat, deeper, more spaced out, almost as if they were made by a larger claw. That's when the mysterious visits began. The first visitor appeared on a hot afternoon, a tall man about 50 years old, with an accent that mixed urban with rural. He wore a white linen shirt that contrasted with his tanned skin. "I'm looking for a cat," he said without preamble, his eyes quickly scanning the interior of Jake's studio. Jake, distrustful, replied that he didn't know of any lost cat. The man insisted, describing Cloud with unsettling precision. He knew specific details, the exact color of its fur, a small mark on its left ear. After a few minutes of uncomfortable conversation, the man left. But something in his gaze left Jake uneasy. The following days, strange footprints began to appear around the house. They weren't cat footprints, but something bigger. Jake photographed them, measured them, compared them with guides of different feline tracks. His work at Ecosoft provided him with advanced technological tools. He used image analysis software to compare the tracks, hoping to find some logical explanation. What he discovered chilled him. The tracks partially matched those of a lion cub. But there was something else, something that didn't fit completely into any known classification. Cloud seemed aware of Jake's investigation. At night, it watched him from a corner of the room, its eyes shining with an intelligence that went beyond natural. When Jake looked at it, Cloud didn't look away. It was a silent challenge, a communication that transcended the verbal. His friend Charlie, a veterinarian by profession, was the first to suggest something radical. "That animal is not a domestic cat," he declared after a thorough examination. "It has genetic characteristics that don't correspond to any known breed. We need to do deeper tests." Jake knew he was on the verge of discovering something extraordinary, but he also sensed that each step he took would lead him deeper into a mystery that could be more dangerous than he imagined. Cloud kept watching him, impassive, as if it knew something that Jake still didn't understand. Charlie's laboratory was a modern space, equipped with cutting-edge technology that combined the best of veterinary medicine with advanced genetic research techniques. Jake arrived early that morning, carrying Cloud in a special carrier designed to minimize the animal's stress. "I've never seen anything like it," Charlie muttered as he prepared the equipment for genetic analysis. His expert hands took samples of blood, hair, and tissue with surgical precision. Cloud remained strangely calm. It didn't show the typical nervousness of animals in a medical environment. Its eyes, always alert, seemed to scan every corner of the laboratory with an intelligence that went beyond natural. The first genetic tests yielded results that defied all scientific understanding. Cloud's DNA showed an extraordinary hybrid structure. It wasn't simply a domestic feline, not even a common wild feline. It was something completely different. "Look at this," Charlie said, projecting the results onto a giant screen. "It has genetic markers that suggest deliberate scientific manipulation. It's not a natural mutation, but something created in a laboratory." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The implications were enormous. What kind of experiment could have produced a creature like Cloud? As they discussed the results, a noise interrupted their concentration. Something had fallen to the floor in another part of the laboratory. When they investigated, they found a collar that had come loose from among the instruments. It was a metal collar with a barcode and a series of engraved numbers. Jake photographed it immediately, activating his contacts in the tech world to try to trace its origin. The investigation led them down an increasingly dark path. The code was linked to a series of classified documents related to a genetic research program operating on the border between the United States and Mexico. That night, back at his house, Jake noticed something different. The footprints around his property were more frequent, and they weren't just Cloud's small footprints. There were larger marks, as if an adult feline was prowling. An encrypted message arrived on his phone, an unknown number, with precise coordinates and a brief note. "What you have is not what you think, it's in danger." Cloud, oblivious to the tension, dozed peacefully in its special bed. But its ears moved constantly, as if alert to sounds Jake couldn't perceive. The investigation was taking a more complex turn. Jake began to meticulously document every discovery. His contacts in the world of conservation and technology began to show a growing interest in the mysterious animal. An unexpected call interrupted his reflections. It was Sarah Ramirez, a renowned biologist specializing in endangered species. "I need to talk to you," she said urgently. "What you have is more important than you imagine, and there are people who would be willing to do anything to recover it." Jake looked at Cloud. The animal was watching him intently, as if it understood the gravity of the moment. The mystery was just beginning to unravel. The meeting with Sarah Ramirez took place in a discreet cafe in the heart of Key West. Jake carefully chose the location, aware that every movement could be being observed. Cloud didn't accompany him, left in Charlie's care at his veterinary clinic. Sarah was a woman in her mid-40s, with a face weathered by years of fieldwork. Her gaze was intense, calculating. When she spoke, she did so in a low voice, almost in a whisper. "The animal you found is the result of a genetic research project that began more than a decade ago," she revealed, discreetly sliding a yellow folder across the table. "It's not just a scientific experiment. It's part of something much bigger." The documents showed a complex network of genetic research that extended from laboratories in the United States to secret facilities in Mexico. The original goal seemed to be the creation of felines with unique characteristics: greater resistance, increased intelligence, superior physical capabilities. "For what?" Jake asked. Sarah hesitated for a moment. "Initially for conservation programs, but then the interests changed. Private groups saw the commercial potential. An animal with these characteristics could be worth millions." The report detailed multiple lines of research: genetic modifications that improved survival capacity, intelligence, and adaptability. Cloud wasn't an accident. It was the result of years of meticulous research. As they reviewed the documents, a message arrived on Jake's phone. It was Charlie. His tone was urgent. "Someone has broken into the clinic. Cloud is fine, but they've gone through all my files." The situation was quickly becoming complicated. That night, Jake installed an advanced security system in his house. State-of-the-art cameras, motion sensors, a security protocol he had originally developed for species conservation projects. Sarah provided additional contacts, a group of scientists and activists who had been following the trail of these genetic experiments for years. Each conversation revealed a deeper layer of the mystery. One piece of information particularly caught Jake's attention. There was evidence that not only Cloud existed, there were others, possibly distributed in different locations, a program wider than it initially seemed. The investigation led them to a network of animal trafficking operating between the United States, Mexico, and several Central American countries. It wasn't just an illegal business. It was a complex ecosystem of scientific, commercial, and possibly governmental interests. A new element appeared: photographs showing hidden research facilities in the jungles of Central America. Structures that didn't appear on any official map, but which Ecosoft satellites had managed to detect. "We need a plan," Sarah said. "Cloud can't stay with you. It's in danger, and so are you." Jake looked at the photographs, feeling that each discovery led him deeper into a labyrinth from which it would be difficult to escape. The question was no longer what Cloud was, but who wanted it and why. The plan to protect Cloud took shape quickly. A wildlife sanctuary in the depths of the Everglades presented itself as the only safe place. It wasn't just any animal refuge, but a facility designed for rare species and specimens that required absolute protection. Jake spent weeks preparing for the move. He modified a van with advanced security systems, bulletproof glass, and a GPS tracking system that could be activated or deactivated at will. Every detail was calculated with the precision of a software developer accustomed to eliminating any possible flaw in a system. The journey would begin at dawn. Cloud seemed to sense something different. Its movements were more cautious, more alert. During the nights leading up to the trip, Jake watched it sleep, wondering how many secrets that creature really held. The morning of the move arrived with a thick fog covering the Florida Keys. Charlie would accompany them to the entrance of the Everglades Reserve, providing medical and professional coverage for the transfer. The first hours of the journey passed without incident. The van advanced along secondary roads, avoiding the main routes. Jake had implemented an encrypted communication system that would allow him to be in contact with Sarah and his contacts in case of any eventuality. It was near midday when they noticed they weren't alone. A black vehicle was following them at a calculated distance. It wasn't an open pursuit, but a meticulous tracking. Jake activated the security protocols he had designed. Subtle changes in speed, imperceptible deviations from the original path. "We're being followed," Charlie murmured, discreetly checking the mirrors. Cloud, inside its specially designed carrier, remained strangely calm. Its eyes followed every movement, every change in the tension of the environment. Through contacts in the conservation world, Jake had prepared multiple escape routes. It wasn't the first time he had protected rare species from illegal trafficking networks. His work at Ecosoft had exposed him to similar situations, although none as personal as this one. An encrypted message arrived on his phone. It was Sarah. "We have information about Cloud's origin. It's not what we thought. There's something bigger behind all this." The message included fragments of a classified report, mentions of a genetic research program dating back more than 2 decades, references to genetic modifications that went beyond simple species improvement. When they were less than 100 kilometers from the sanctuary, the black vehicle finally caught up with them. There was no attempt to stop them. It simply followed them, like a threatening shadow. Jake remembered Sarah's words, "What you have is more valuable than you imagine, not just because of Cloud, but because of what it represents." The sanctuary appeared on the horizon, a modern structure camouflaged among the vegetation of the Everglades. But something in the way they were received didn't sit well with Jake. The feeling that something wasn't completely right settled inside him. Cloud looked at him intently, as if it knew something he still didn't understand. The Everglades Sanctuary was an impressive structure that defied the typical image of an animal refuge. Designed as a state-of-the-art research complex, it combined high-tech facilities with natural spaces that simulated the original habitats of the species. Dr. Thompson, a veterinarian in his mid-50s, with a look that combined experience and caution, greeted them personally. His handshake with Jake was firm, but Jake noticed an almost imperceptible tremor in his fingers. "We've prepared a special space for your guest," Thompson said, directing his gaze towards the carrier, where Cloud remained motionless. The facilities were impeccable. Glass laboratories blended with green spaces. Large windows allowed views of different sections of the complex. But something in the environment didn't quite convince Jake. The movements of the staff were too calculated, the looks too controlled. While completing the entry procedures, Jake noticed details that seemed strange to him. Some employees wore collars similar to the one they had found with Cloud. The security cameras seemed to be configured to show only what they wanted to be seen. Cloud began to show signs of restlessness. Its ears moved constantly, as if capturing sounds that no one else could hear. The animal's eyes scanned the facility with an intensity that went beyond simple curiosity. A crucial moment came during the final medical review. Dr. Thompson was performing a last check when something caught Jake's attention. A barely visible scar on Cloud's neck, which seemed to be the result of some type of surgical intervention. "What's this?" Jake asked, pointing to the mark. Thompson seemed to hesitate for an instant. "A standard identification mark," he responded quickly. Too quickly. The conversation was interrupted by a noise in the hallway. A group of people dressed in white coats passed by quickly, carrying what appeared to be specialized research equipment. A message arrived on Jake's phone. It was Sarah, sending an encrypted file. When he managed to decipher it, what he found left him cold. The report detailed a genetic research program much more complex than they had imagined. Cloud wasn't an isolated experiment, but part of an international network of genetic modification involving scientists from several countries. The ultimate goal went beyond conservation or research. They talked about creating species with enhanced capabilities, adaptable to extreme environments with superior intelligence. As Jake processed the information, he noticed something that left him paralyzed. A photograph in the report showed Cloud next to another similar creature. They weren't simply 2 animals. They seemed to be part of something bigger. Suddenly, the laboratory lights flickered. Cloud became completely alert, its muscles tense, prepared for something Jake still couldn't understand. "Doctor," Thompson approached slowly. "There's something you need to know," he said in a voice that no longer sounded like that of a simple veterinarian. The truth was about to be revealed. The silence that followed Dr. Thompson's words was deafening. Jake felt that each passing second revealed a deeper layer of a mystery that had begun that rainy night in Key West. "What I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know," Thompson began, leading Jake to a private room in the complex. The walls were covered with screens showing images of different animal specimens, complex genetic graphs, and research maps. The complete report was devastating. Cloud wasn't an isolated experiment, but part of an international genetic modification program dating back more than 2 decades. Scientists from the United States, Mexico, Russia, and several European countries had been working on a secret project to create species with enhanced capabilities. The original goal seemed noble, to develop animals capable of surviving in extreme environments, with greater resistance and intelligence. But over time, the project had mutated. Private interest groups saw the commercial potential of these creatures. Cloud is unique, Thompson explained. Its genetic structure shows modifications that go beyond what we had imagined. It's not just an enhanced animal, it's almost a new species. Genetic tests showed modifications in its DNA that conferred extraordinary capabilities, greater intelligence, improved reflexes, an adaptability that defied current scientific understanding. As they talked, Jake noticed movement outside the room. People dressed in special suits moved with military precision. They weren't simple animal caretakers. They seemed to be part of something bigger. One detail particularly caught his attention: photographs showing Cloud next to another similar creature. They weren't simply two animals. They seemed to be connected in a way that went beyond the physical. Sarah, who had been following the investigation from a distance, sent a cryptic message: "Don't trust completely. Something's not right in that place." Suddenly, the complex's alarm began to sound. It wasn't a common alarm. It was something more complex, more specific. Cloud, which had remained calm until that moment, became completely alert. "We have to get out of here," Thompson said, his tone changing radically. He no longer sounded like a scientist. He seemed more like an agent preparing for an operation. A group of people began to move quickly. Jake noticed that some carried weapons, discreetly hidden but clearly prepared for any eventuality. The truth was beginning to reveal itself, but each answer generated more questions. Cloud watched them, as if it knew exactly what was happening. A final message arrived on Jake's phone. It was from an unknown number, but the content was clear and direct. "What they're looking for is closer than they think. Cloud is not alone." The web of secrets was beginning to unravel, threatening to expose a project that many had kept hidden for decades. The silence that followed Dr. Thompson's words was deafening. Jake felt that each passing second revealed a deeper layer of a mystery that had begun that rainy night in Key West. "What I'm going to tell you will change everything you believe you know," Thompson began, leading Jake to a private room in the complex. The walls were covered with screens showing images of different creatures, research maps, and complex genetic sequences. The revelation was gradual but devastating. Cloud wasn't an isolated experiment, but part of an international genetic modification program dating back more than 2 decades. The original objective had emerged from a secret collaboration between scientists from the United States, Mexico, and several European countries. "Imagine a species capable of adapting to extreme climate changes," Thompson explained. "A creature with the intelligence of a primate, the resistance of a large feline, and the survival capacity of the most adaptable species on the planet." The images on the screens showed different stages of research, subtle genetic modifications that completely transformed the capabilities of the animals. Cloud was just one of several specimens, perhaps the most advanced. A detail caught Jake's attention. Some of the genetic modifications not only improved physical capabilities, but seemed to be designed to increase intelligence and communication capacity. "Why?" Jake asked. Thompson hesitated for a moment. "Initially for conservation studies. Then interests changed. Private groups saw the commercial potential. A creature with these characteristics could be invaluable." As they talked, Cloud remained in an adjoining room, but something was different. The animal seemed to be communicating with other specimens through sounds that went beyond what was audible to humans. An unexpected blow changed everything. An alarm began to sound, and the screens filled with images of movement in different sections of the complex. "They've found us," Thompson murmured. Jake then understood that the real danger wasn't simply capturing Cloud. It was something much more complex. Someone wanted to recover all the specimens, erase any trace of the research. A group of people dressed in black began to surround the complex. They weren't official authorities. They seemed to be a private operations unit with a very specific objective. Sarah, who had been monitoring the situation remotely, sent a crucial message. "They have orders to eliminate all traces, including witnesses." Jake looked at Thompson. The veterinarian no longer seemed like a simple scientist. There was something more to him, a determination that went beyond research. "We have to get it out of here," Thompson said, pointing at Cloud. "Not just for it, for everything it represents." The lights of the complex began to flicker. The security systems entered emergency mode, and Cloud, in the midst of it all, remained completely alert. as if it knew that the decisive moment had arrived. The real battle was about to begin. The chaos in the complex unfolded with almost surgical precision. Jake found himself being guided by Thompson through corridors that seemed to be constantly changing, as if the building itself were a living and adaptable structure. Cloud remained incredibly calm, its movements calculated, its eyes constantly alert. Jake noticed something he hadn't seen before. The animal seemed to be silently communicating with its environment, as if it could perceive something beyond the visible. A series of screens in a side room began to show classified information, distribution maps of genetically modified specimens, secret research routes that extended across several continents. The project was much larger than anyone had imagined. "It's not just a research program," Thompson explained as they navigated through the data. "It's a global network of interests involving governments, private corporations, and independent research groups." The files revealed multiple lines of research. Some specimens had been developed for extreme environments, Arctic zones, dense jungles, even possible adaptations for environments with reduced gravity conditions. One detail particularly caught Jake's attention. There were references to multiple offspring like Cloud, distributed in different locations. It wasn't a unique experiment, but part of a broader strategy. Suddenly, the lights of the complex flickered. An emergency protocol was activated, and doors began to close automatically. Thompson changed his expression. He was no longer just a scientist, he seemed like an agent prepared for any eventuality. "We have to move," he said urgently. "They've located us." A group of people dressed in tactical suits began to move through the complex. They didn't seem to be regular security personnel. Their movements were too precise, too coordinated. Cloud began to show a reaction that defied all understanding. Its senses seemed to be connected to something bigger. It moved as if it could predict the movements of those surrounding them. An encrypted message arrived on Jake's phone. It was Sarah, with crucial information. What they're looking for isn't just Cloud. It's what it represents. A new form of life that can change everything we know about evolution and adaptation. As they fled through a side corridor, Jake noticed something extraordinary. Cloud didn't seem scared. On the contrary, it seemed to be following a plan that only it knew. The connections were beginning to reveal themselves. It wasn't a simple scientific project. It was something much bigger, a network of interests that could rewrite the understanding of life itself. A final file opened on Jake's screen, an image that left him cold. Cloud wasn't alone. There were others like it, strategically distributed in different parts of the world. The true nature of the project was about to be revealed. The sanctuary in the Appalachian Mountains was more than just a simple hideout. It was a complex, designed to protect the deepest secrets of the project. Built in the midst of the forest, camouflaged among dense vegetation, barely visible to any conventional tracking system. Sarah was waiting for them. Her presence was different. She was no longer just a scientist, but someone who seemed to know every detail of the project from its origin. "What we're about to reveal will change everything," she said as they reviewed the latest files extracted from the complex. Cloud remained in a specially designed room. It wasn't a cage, but a space that seemed to constantly adapt to its needs. The animal showed an intelligence that went beyond any scientific expectation. The final files revealed the complete truth. The project wasn't simply a line of genetic research. It was a plan to create a new form of life, a species capable of adapting to any environment with an intelligence that far surpassed human understanding. Thompson began to explain the deepest details. Cloud was part of a global network of specimens, each designed to function as part of a larger system. They weren't animals in the traditional sense, but something completely new. "Imagine a life form," he explained, "that can communicate beyond the limits of language, that can instantly adapt to any environmental challenge, that can process information at speeds that surpass any current computer." Jake then understood that what they had found went far beyond a simple scientific experiment. It was the beginning of something completely new. A final file revealed Cloud's true origin. It wasn't an accident, not even an isolated experiment. It was part of a much larger plan, designed to evolve and adapt. Suddenly, Cloud began to show extraordinary behavior. Its movements suggested it was communicating in a way that went beyond the visible, as if it could connect with other specimens through something more than physical signals. Sarah approached Jake. "What comes now will change everything we know about life evolution, and intelligence. A final message arrived, this time not through a device, but in a way Jake couldn't explain. A connection that went beyond the physical, something that Cloud seemed able to transmit. The message was simple but profound. We are not alone, we are the next step. As the sun set over the Appalachian Mountains, Jake understood that what they had discovered was just the beginning of something much bigger. Cloud looked at him, with eyes that seemed to contain a whole universe of possibilities. The truth was revealed, and the future was beginning now.